Why do some nations awaken only when the house is burning down? Why do some people wait until crisis forces their hand before they act? I've studied this question for years, watched nations delay, watched individuals hesitate, watched democracy itself sleep at the switch, and what I've discovered is this: the secret to doing hard things isn't about having courage when everything is falling apart. It's about making up your mind before the test arrives. It's about the decision to act when the danger is still distant. That decision, that single moment of psychological commitment, changes everything. You're here because something in your life feels hard. Perhaps you're facing a challenge that requires sustained effort, a career change, a creative pursuit, a commitment you're not sure you can keep. Perhaps you've started and stopped before. Perhaps you've told yourself you'll begin when you feel ready, when circumstances improve, when the moment is right. I want to share with you what I learned studying why nations succeed or fail under pressure and how those same principles apply to your life. Because here's what I've come to understand: the difference between accomplishment and frustration isn't about your natural ability. It's about a specific kind of preparation most people never learn. Let me be direct about the pain you're experiencing. You start with enthusiasm but can't maintain momentum. You wait for crisis to force your hand rather than acting early. You feel you lack the courage or discipline of others. You don't know how to sustain sacrifice when you see no immediate reward. And you've convinced yourself that some people are just different, that they have something you don't. But what if I told you that democracy, the freest, most vital system ever created, has the same fundamental challenge you do? It struggles to maintain sustained effort. It debates when it should act. It postpones sacrifice until emergency forces it. And yet, democracy survives. It survives because it learns a secret. Voluntary effort, properly directed and sustained, creates a force more powerful than any temporary burst of crisis-driven action. What I'm offering isn't motivation. Motivation fades. I'm offering you the framework I used to understand human commitment under pressure, distilled from studying how free people accomplish hard things when they could easily choose comfort. You'll learn not just what to do, but why we struggle, and how to transform that struggle into sustained purpose. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about understanding the choice every person faces: to awaken when the house burns, or to keep watch before the fire starts. That choice and how you make it is everything. Let me tell you about a nation that had every advantage and nearly lost everything because they couldn't bring themselves to act before crisis forced them. In the 1930s, Britain faced a growing threat. Germany was rearming rapidly. The evidence was clear. Churchill warned them. Intelligence confirmed it. And yet, year after year, Britain delayed. Not because they didn't know, not because they couldn't afford it, but because they couldn't truly believe the test would come. A boxer cannot work himself into condition for a fight he believes will never happen. Britain couldn't prepare for a war they couldn't accept as real. They had every rational reason to act, but they lacked the psychological commitment to bear the sacrifice before the enemy stood at their door. Here's what happened. When they finally awoke, they had to compress years of preparation into months. Labor worked 7-day weeks. Factories increased production by 100%. The entire nation poured out energy that had been stored for years, and they survived, but at tremendous cost. The lesson isn't that they failed. The lesson is this: the vitality they showed under pressure had always existed. It was there during the quiet years when action seemed optional. They simply couldn't access it until catastrophe forced them to believe it was necessary. You do the same thing. You have capacity right now, strength, discipline, focus, that you'll only discover when you convince yourself you have no choice. The secret is learning to access that capacity before you're forced to. Think about the challenge you're facing. How much of your hesitation comes from a quiet belief that maybe you won't actually have to face it? That circumstances might change? That it might get easier? That belief, even if you're not conscious of it, is what's holding you back. I studied Britain's preparation for war for my senior thesis at college. I wanted to understand why a great democracy, with all its resources and intelligence, could fail so dramatically to ready itself for a threat everyone could see coming. And what I learned changed how I understood human action entirely. It wasn't stupidity. It wasn't cowardice. It was something more fundamental: the inability to truly believe in future danger when present comfort seemed secure. Britain in 1936 was prosperous. People were working. The economy was recovering from depression. War seemed like a terrible possibility, yes, but not an immediate reality. And because it wasn't immediate, because it was tomorrow's problem, the sacrifices needed to prepare felt unreasonable. Why should labor give up hard-won protections for a threat that might not materialize? Why should business interrupt profitable peacetime production? Why should citizens pay higher taxes for armaments they hoped they'd never use? Every group had logical reasons to delay. And in a democracy where voluntary action is the foundation of everything, those logical reasons carried weight. No dictator could force unity. No single voice could override the collective desire to hope for the best. So they delayed, they debated, they appointed committees to study the problem, they made small improvements that felt like action but weren't equal to the threat. And month by month, year by year, they fell further behind. Then came Munich in 1938. Chamberlain returned from meeting Hitler, waving a piece of paper, announcing peace in our time. The nation wanted to believe him. The alternative was too frightening. But the crisis revealed something terrible. Britain wasn't ready. They didn't have the aircraft. They didn't have the air raid precautions. They didn't have the industrial capacity. If war came, they would be catastrophically unprepared. Munich bought them time, but it also exposed the cost of years of delay. Finally, with German tanks rolling through Europe, Britain awakened fully. And here's what I want you to understand. The vigor and determination they showed then was extraordinary. Labor worked around the clock. Class distinctions melted away. Rich and poor unified behind a common purpose. Production rates that had seemed impossible suddenly happened. The latent energy of a free people, once fully mobilized, proved more powerful than any dictatorship could command. But they paid a terrible price for waiting so long. They lost years of preparation time. They fought the early years of the war with inadequate equipment. They suffered defeats that could have been avoided. They won in the end, yes, but at a cost in blood and treasure that proper early preparation could have reduced. The vitality was always there. The capacity was always there. What was missing was the decision to act before they had no choice. You're doing this right now in your life. The hard thing you're avoiding, the challenge you keep postponing, you have the capacity to face it. That capacity exists in you right now, today, this moment. But you won't access it until you truly believe you have to. Until then, you'll plan, you'll prepare, you'll research, you'll wait for the right moment, and all of that will feel like action. But it's not the same as commitment. It's not the same as deciding that the test will come and preparing as if your life depends on it. Any person will awaken when the house is burning down. That takes no courage. What you need is the capacity to wake up when the fire first starts. Better yet, to prevent the fire from starting at all. And that capacity comes from one thing: making up your mind before circumstances force you to. But let me show you the other side. What happens when people commit before they feel ready? Millions of people left everything familiar and crossed an ocean to a land where they had no guarantees. The Italians who came had been farmers. They ended up in city tenements, working as diggers and hod carriers. The Irish fled famine only to face prejudice and poverty. My own great-grandfather left Ireland carrying nothing but faith and desire for liberty. When my great-grandfather left County Wexford to become a cooper in East Boston, he carried nothing with him except a strong religious faith and a strong desire for liberty. No money, no connections. No promise that things would work out. If he hadn't left, I would be working at the Albatross Company across the road from where he lived. Think about that. One decision made in the face of tremendous uncertainty changed the entire trajectory of generations. These people, your grandparents perhaps, faced something harder than a temporary challenge. They faced years of toil with no certainty of reward. Their children might not speak their language. Their skills might not translate. They might never see their homeland again. The loneliness was crushing. The poverty was real. The prejudice they faced was vicious. Italian immigrants were called terrible names, denied housing, given the worst jobs. Irish immigrants were told no Irish need apply. They worked 12, 14-hour days in dangerous conditions for wages barely sufficient to survive. So why did they do it? Not because they were naturally courageous, not because difficulty didn't frighten them, but because they made a decision that something larger than their comfort was worth the cost. They decided, and then they bore what their decision required. Year after year, with no applause, with no immediate reward, with nothing but faith that the sacrifice meant something, I've watched this pattern in every generation. Some people wait until they have no choice. They need the house to burn before they wake. But others, the ones who accomplish hard things, they make up their minds about what matters, and then they do what that commitment requires, year in and year out, whether they feel like it or not. The difference between those who transform their lives and those who remain frustrated isn't courage. It's this: the willingness to decide before you feel you must. My great-grandfather didn't wait until Ireland became completely impossible. He left while he still had the capacity to choose. He decided that liberty and opportunity for his children mattered more than the comfort of staying in a familiar place. That decision, made voluntarily before he was forced, gave him a kind of power. He wasn't fleeing in desperation, he was choosing with intention. And that made all the difference. You have that same choice available to you right now. The hard thing you're facing, you can decide about it today, not when circumstances force you, not when you have no options left, but now, while you still have the freedom to choose. That voluntary decision, made before you must, carries a force that desperate action never has. It builds something in you. It proves to yourself that you're capable of commitment, not because you have to be, but because you chose to be. Think about the immigrants who built this country. They weren't extraordinary people in the beginning. They were ordinary farmers, laborers, craftsmen who made an extraordinary decision, and that decision transformed them. The years of hardship didn't break them, it built them, because they had chosen it. They had decided it was meaningful, and that sense of chosen purpose sustained them through difficulties that forced hardship could never have endured. Now, I want to be honest with you about something uncomfortable. Democracy has a fundamental problem. It's geared for peace and prosperity, not for sacrifice. When the interests of the individual aren't directly threatened, it's nearly impossible to maintain effort. This freedom, this same freedom that allows us to build extraordinary lives, also makes it easy to postpone hard things. I say this because you have the same problem. The very freedom that gives you the capacity to accomplish something meaningful also gives you the freedom to delay, to wait, to tell yourself tomorrow. Nobody's forcing you to do the hard thing. Nobody's compelling your action. You're free to choose comfort, free to choose ease, free to postpone sacrifice indefinitely. And that freedom, which is precious, which is the foundation of everything good in your life, is also what makes sustained effort so difficult. During the years when Britain should have been preparing, labor unions resisted because they'd fought for years to protect their gains. They saw government pressure as a greater threat than distant Germany. They had won the right to decent wages, reasonable hours, safe working conditions through decades of struggle. Any suggestion that they should dilute their skilled labor, work longer hours, accept worse conditions, even temporarily, felt like betraying everything they'd fought for. And from their perspective, they were right to be cautious. How many times had workers been told to sacrifice for the national good, only to have those sacrifices become permanent losses? Business prioritized profit, which in a free economy is not just acceptable but necessary. Why should private companies interrupt profitable production to make armaments the government might not need? Why should they invest in capacity for war production when peace remained possible? In a dictatorship, the state simply commands what it wants. In a democracy, business must be persuaded, convinced, compensated, and that process takes time, requires negotiation, respects the legitimate interests of owners and shareholders. Citizens prioritize comfort and family, which is natural and right. Why should they pay higher taxes for a threat that might never materialize? Why should they support conscription when their sons might be the ones called up? Why should they accept disruptions to normal life when peace seemed achievable through negotiation? These weren't selfish questions. These were human questions. People wanted to believe that war could be avoided, that reason would prevail, that the sacrifices could be postponed just a little longer. No one was wrong for wanting what they wanted. But the system, built on voluntary action, couldn't mobilize until emergency forced unity, and by then, precious years had been lost. The democracy's greatest strength, the vitality and independence of free people, was also its greatest weakness when facing a threat that required early, sustained sacrifice. You know this feeling? Part of you wants the hard thing, wants to build something, change something, become something, but another part wants ease, wants to protect what you already have, wants to avoid risk. Both voices are legitimate. Both are you. The part that wants ease isn't lazy. It's not weak. It's human. It's the part that says, I've worked hard for what I have. Why should I risk it? It's the part that says, maybe things will work out without me having to do the hard thing. It's the part that says, I deserve rest, comfort, security. And the part that wants the hard thing isn't superior. It's not more virtuous. It's just the part that recognizes something worth sacrifice. It's the part that says this matters more than my comfort. It's the part that says I'd rather try and fail than never try at all. Both parts are real. Both deserve respect. The question is, which one you're going to decide with. The secret to doing hard things isn't silencing the voice that wants ease. It's recognizing that voluntary action you choose before you must, creates something far more powerful than action forced by crisis. When you choose early, you're not just doing the hard thing. You're building the capacity to function under pressure. You're becoming the system that works in the pinches. Democracy survives, not because crisis makes it strong, but because enough people decide to act before crisis forces them. Enough people decide that freedom is worth defending before the enemy is at the door. Enough people decide that shared sacrifice is necessary before catastrophe compels it. Enough people wake up while there's still time. Your life works the same way. It survives and thrives, not because you rise to every crisis, though you will, but because you decide to act before the crisis makes action mandatory. When Britain finally mobilized fully, when they gave Churchill powers equal to any dictator, when they unified labor and management and class behind the single purpose of survival, the results were extraordinary. Production increased by rates that had seemed impossible. People worked with an intensity and focus they didn't know they possessed. The vitality that comes from free people voluntarily united behind a purpose they believe in exceeded anything forced labor could achieve. But here's what matters. That vitality existed the whole time. It was there in 1936. It was there in 1937. It was there during all the years of delay and debate. The capacity for extraordinary effort didn't appear when crisis came. It was always present, latent, waiting for the decision to unlock it. Crisis didn't create the capacity. Crisis created the belief that using the capacity was necessary. You have that same latent capacity right now. The strength you'll show under pressure, the focus you'll have when you have no choice, the determination you'll discover when circumstances force you, all of that exists in you today. You don't need crisis to access it. You need decision. You need the willingness to believe that the test will come and to prepare as if it's already here. Now that you understand why we struggle, let me show you how to overcome it. The first principle is this: you must make up your mind about what will happen before the test arrives. America will never be ready for war. Never until she makes up her mind that there is going to be a war. The moment she makes up her mind, then there is no war she cannot win. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not preparation that matters first. It's the mental decision that preparation is necessary. This applies directly to your hard thing. You're trying to prepare for something you haven't truly accepted will happen. Maybe it's a career change you're researching. Maybe it's a creative project you're planning. Maybe it's a relationship you're trying to improve. But somewhere in your mind, you believe it might not happen. You might not have to face it. Circumstances might change. It might get easier. That belief, that unconscious conviction that maybe you won't have to do this, sabotages everything. You cannot work yourself into condition for a fight you don't believe is coming. Britain couldn't prepare for a war they hope to avoid. You can't prepare for your hard thing while hoping you won't have to face it. The preparation requires commitment. The commitment requires belief. The belief requires decision. Here's what you must do. Decide. Not later. Not when you feel ready. Now. Make up your mind that this hard thing will happen, that you will face it, that the comfortable alternative is gone. The moment you truly decide, everything changes. Not because decision makes it easier, but because decision makes preparation possible. I don't mean decide to try. I don't mean decide to attempt. I mean decide that this will happen. Remove the maybe. Eliminate the escape hatch. Close the door on the comfortable alternative. Make the decision automatic. If you debate, if you hesitate, if you question, it will be too late. The hard thing requires commitment before clarity. It requires action before certainty. It requires that you wake up when the fire first starts, not when the house is burning. Think about Munich. Chamberlain returned with his paper, his promise of peace in our time. Britain wanted desperately to believe that war could be avoided. That desire, that hope, prevented them from making the hard decision earlier. They kept the door open to the possibility that maybe they wouldn't have to fight. Maybe diplomacy would work. Maybe Hitler would be satisfied. Maybe sacrifice wouldn't be necessary. But keeping that door open, that hope that the hard thing might not come, cost them years of preparation. When the test finally arrived, they paid the price for that delay. The decision must be automatic, means you decide once, fully, and then you don't keep reconsidering whether the decision was right. You made it, now you execute it. So ask yourself right now, what have I been preparing for without truly believing I'll face it? Where have I been planning but not committing? What hard thing do I keep thinking about but haven't decided about? Name it. Say it out loud if you need to. And then decide. Decide that it's happening. Decide that you're doing it. Decide that the comfortable alternative is no longer available to you. Make that decision real. The decision must feel like a door closing. It must feel like burning the ships on the shore. It must feel like a commitment from which there's no comfortable retreat, because that's what it is. You're not deciding to try, you're deciding that this will be. And that decision, once truly made, changes everything that follows. But how do you maintain that commitment when months or years stretch ahead with no visible reward? This brings us to the second principle. Democracy finds it difficult to keep up sustained effort over a long period. So do you. This is the central challenge of doing hard things. It's not the crisis that tests you. Anyone can rise to crisis. The crisis provides clarity, urgency, emotion. The real test is the quiet time before the crisis. The years when you must make sacrifices with no immediate reward. When you must work with no applause. When you must prepare for something that may not arrive for months or years. This is where most people fail. They start strong, they decide, they commit, they begin with energy and enthusiasm. But sustained sacrifice without immediate reward feels unbearable. The individual's interests aren't directly threatened, so commitment weakens. Day by day, the hard thing gets postponed. The initial energy fades. The reasons to delay seem more reasonable than the reasons to continue, and slowly, often without even noticing, the commitment erodes. I watched this happen to Britain year after year. Each year, they'd resolve to do better. Each year, they'd increase their armament budget. Each year, they'd announce new programs. But the increases were never enough. The programs were never sustained, because the emergency never felt immediate enough to justify the level of sacrifice that proper preparation required. The threat was always tomorrow's problem, so today's sacrifice always felt premature. Here's what I learned. Long, sustained sacrifice is possible when you connect it to something larger than immediate comfort. The immigrants who came to this country endured years of hardship because they attached their suffering to a vision, liberty, opportunity, a better life for their children. They weren't motivated by comfort. They were motivated by meaning. My great-grandfather worked brutal hours as a cooper, making barrels, earning barely enough to survive. But he wasn't just making barrels. He was building a foundation for his children. He was claiming freedom. He was proving that a person could cross an ocean and make a life through their own effort. That meaning sustained him when comfort wouldn't have. You must do the same. Your hard thing, whatever it is, must be connected to something beyond immediate benefit, not comfort, not even success, but something you're willing to bear hardship for year after year. Ask yourself, what would make this sacrifice meaningful even if the reward were distant? What would make the hard work worthwhile even if no one applauded? What larger purpose makes this worth bearing? Until you answer that question, you're relying on willpower. And willpower fails in the long run. Willpower is like a muscle that fatigues. You can push through for a day, a week, maybe a month, but year after year, willpower alone isn't enough. You need something deeper. You need meaning. You need purpose. You need a connection between your daily sacrifice and something that matters to you beyond immediate gain. Think carefully about this. Why does your hard thing matter? And I don't mean the surface answer. I don't mean because it would be nice, or because you should, or because other people expect it. I mean, what would make the years of effort meaningful to you personally? Maybe it's about proving to yourself that you're capable of sustained commitment. Maybe it's about serving something beyond yourself. Maybe it's about refusing to let freedom become an excuse for drift. Maybe it's about honoring someone who sacrificed for you. Maybe it's about becoming the kind of person who keeps their word to themselves. Whatever it is, name it, make it conscious, make it specific, write it down if that helps, because this connection between your daily effort and your larger purpose is what will sustain you when motivation fails. Democracy survives because enough people decide their freedom is worth sacrifice. Your hard thing survives on the same principle. The belief that what you're building is worth what it costs. And here's something most people miss. The meaning doesn't have to be grand, doesn't have to be world-changing. It has to be real to you. My great-grandfather wasn't trying to change the world. He was trying to give his children a chance at something better. That was enough. It sustained him through years of hardship that would have broken someone without that purpose. Your purpose doesn't need to inspire anyone else. It needs to be strong enough to sustain you when no one else is watching. But what about the weakness you feel? The moments when you're not sure you have what it takes? This brings me to the third principle, and it's one people often misunderstand. It is right and proper to believe in yourself and your capacity, but it is not right and proper to be blind to your weaknesses. I studied Britain's failures not to condemn them, but to understand them. They had real weaknesses, structural weaknesses, that made preparation difficult. But ignoring those weaknesses didn't make them disappear. It made them decisive. They kept planning, as if voluntary action under democracy was as easy as commanded action under dictatorship. It wasn't. And pretending otherwise cost them years. You have weaknesses. You struggle to maintain effort. You prioritize immediate comfort over distant goals. You debate when you should act. You question your decisions. You lose motivation. These aren't moral failures. They're human realities. The same freedom that gives you capacity also gives you the ability to avoid hard things. And you will use that freedom to avoid discomfort unless you plan for your own weaknesses. The secret isn't to overcome these weaknesses through force of will. The secret is to structure your life around them. Britain should have recognized that voluntary action under democracy is difficult, and therefore started earlier, planned more carefully, built systems that didn't rely on sustained enthusiasm. They didn't. They planned as if everyone would maintain peak motivation indefinitely. That was a mistake. You must do the same but better. Don't plan as if you'll have perfect discipline. Plan knowing you'll struggle. Don't rely on motivation. Build systems that work even when you don't feel motivated. Don't wait for strength you don't have. Work with the strength you do have and build from there. Here's what that means practically. If you struggle with consistency, don't plan to work every day for hours. Plan to work for 15 minutes every day and build slowly. The goal isn't to do as much as possible right away. The goal is to build the habit of showing up before you're forced to. If you struggle with accountability, don't rely on self-discipline alone. Find others who share your commitment. Tell them what you've decided. Report your progress. Make the commitment social in some way so that it's not just internal willpower holding you to it. If you struggle with delayed reward, create small milestones that give you evidence of progress. Don't just aim for the final outcome that's years away. Mark the path with visible achievements that show you're moving forward. The great advantage a free life gives you is the opportunity to recognize your weaknesses and plan accordingly. Use it. Build your preparation around your real capacity, not your ideal capacity. Don't pretend you're someone you're not. Work with who you actually are and design systems that help that person succeed. Britain made the mistake of planning for ideal conditions. They assumed labor would cooperate fully. They assumed business would prioritize national need. They assumed citizens would accept sacrifice cheerfully. None of that happened because it was unrealistic. Real people have real limits. Real people have competing interests. Real people struggle with sustained effort. Planning as if those realities don't exist is a path to failure. So be honest with yourself. What are your actual weaknesses? Where do you actually struggle? Don't judge it. Don't be ashamed of it. Just recognize it so you can plan around it. If you know you lose motivation after a few weeks, plan for that. Build in renewal moments. Create variety. Connect with others who are on similar paths. If you know you get discouraged easily, plan for that. Keep evidence of your progress visible. Remind yourself why the sacrifice matters. Celebrate small wins. The people who succeed at hard things aren't the ones without weaknesses. They're the ones who build systems that work despite their weaknesses. They're realistic about their limits and creative about working within them. They don't rely on being a different person. They work with the person they are. And here's the truth that ties everything together. A dictatorship has advantages. It can force unity. It can command sacrifice. It can mobilize quickly. But democracy, for all its struggles, survives because voluntary effort, properly directed, creates a force more powerful than compulsion ever could. When Britain finally awoke, the vitality they showed was possible only because it had existed all along in free labor unions, free citizens, free industry. The same independence that made preparation difficult made survival possible. Voluntary effort, once mobilized, had vigor that forced effort could never match. You have the same advantage. The freedom that makes your hard thing difficult, the freedom to choose ease, to delay, to question, that same freedom means that when you do choose action, it carries force that duty alone can never provide. This is the secret. When you voluntarily choose sacrifice before you must, you're not just doing the hard thing. You're accessing the deepest capacity you have. You're proving to yourself that you can function under pressure by creating pressure before circumstances force it. The hard thing you're facing, it will eventually force your hand if it matters. The house will eventually burn. The question is whether you'll wait until then or whether you'll choose now, voluntarily, with full knowledge of the cost, to do what you'll eventually have to do anyway. That voluntary choice, made early, transforms everything. It gives you time. It gives you preparation. Most importantly, it gives you proof that you're capable of sustained commitment. And that proof, that knowledge of your own capacity, is what allows you to function in the pinches when they finally arrive. Think about the difference. When crisis forces you to act, you discover that you can. You find reserves of strength you didn't know you had. You function under pressure, but you also think, I only did this because I had no choice. The next time opportunity comes for voluntary action, you wait again for circumstances to force you. You become dependent on crisis to access your own capacity. But when you choose action voluntarily, before circumstances compel it, you prove something different. You prove that you can act from decision, not just from desperation. You prove that you have access to your full capacity at any time, not just when the house is burning. And that proof changes everything about how you see yourself and what you believe you're capable of. So how do you actually live this? Let me give you specific steps you can take starting today. First, create a moment where you formally decide, not casually, not I'll try, but a real decision. Here's how. Take the hard thing you're facing. Get out paper and a pen. Write down, in your own hand, what you're committing to. Not what you hope for, not what you'll attempt, what you're deciding. Make it specific. Make it time-bound. Make it real. Write something like, I have decided to commit 1 hour every day for the next 6 months to building this skill. Or, I have decided to have the difficult conversation I've been avoiding within the next week. Or, I have decided to change my career path and I will take the first concrete step within the next month. Whatever your hard thing is, name it specifically and put a commitment to it in writing. Then read it aloud to yourself. Stand up if possible. Speak with the weight of command. Say, I have decided. This is not something I'll try. This is something I will do. I understand the cost. I accept it. The decision is made. Do this alone, or if you can, do it in front of someone whose respect you want to keep. The formality matters. Democracy works through voluntary commitment, but that commitment must be real. Make yours real. After you decide, anytime you question whether to act, you don't debate the action. You remember the decision. The decision was made. Now you're simply executing it. You don't relitigate every day whether you're going to work on your hard thing. You decided. That debate is over. Now you just show up and do what you decided to do. This removes a tremendous amount of mental energy that gets wasted in daily redeciding. Second, design a system that works with your weaknesses, not against them. Ask yourself, What's the smallest action I can do daily that moves toward this hard thing? Not the ideal action. The minimum action you can sustain even when motivation fails. For most people, this is surprisingly small. 15 minutes, one page, one task. The goal isn't to do as much as possible. The goal is to build the pattern of showing up before you're forced to. Britain made the mistake of planning grand programs that required perfect conditions and sustained peak effort. When conditions weren't perfect and effort flagged, everything stalled. Don't make that mistake. Plan small. Plan sustainable. Plan for your weakest day, not your strongest. What can you do on a day when you're tired, discouraged, busy, unmotivated? That's your minimum action. Do that every day without exception. Then protect that minimum action absolutely. Not because the action itself is sufficient, but because sustained action, even small action, builds the psychological capacity for larger sacrifice. You're training yourself to act voluntarily before emergency demands it. You're proving to yourself that you can maintain commitment over time. That proof is worth more than the actual work accomplished in any single day. Schedule it, make it automatic, remove decisions. The more you eliminate daily choices, the more you preserve energy for the actual work. Make up your mind once about when and how you'll act, then simply execute that pattern. I will work on this every morning at 6 for 15 minutes before anything else. I will practice this skill every evening after dinner for 20 minutes. I will take one action toward this goal every day before I check email. Make the pattern specific, automatic, non-negotiable. And here's critical. Track it. Keep visible evidence that you're showing up, not for motivation, for proof. Get a calendar and mark an X every day you do your minimum action. Keep a simple log that shows your consistency. When the hard months come, and they will, you'll need evidence that you're capable of sustained effort. Create that evidence now. Visual proof of consistency is surprisingly powerful. It becomes something you don't want to break. It becomes evidence of who you are, not just what you do. Third, every day, remind yourself why this sacrifice is meaningful. The immigrants who transformed this nation didn't endure hardship through willpower. They endured it because they attached their suffering to something larger, their children's future, human liberty, escape from oppression. You need the same connection, not to success, not to comfort, but to something you're willing to bear hardship for. So practice this. Before you act each day, pause for 30 seconds. Ask yourself, why does this hard thing matter beyond my immediate benefit? What am I building that's worth the cost? Who am I becoming through this sustained sacrifice? Don't rush this. Don't make up false meaning. Find real meaning. Maybe it's about proving to yourself that you're capable of commitment. Maybe it's about serving something beyond yourself. Maybe it's about refusing to let freedom become an excuse for drift. Maybe it's about keeping faith with someone who sacrificed for you. Whatever it is, name it daily. The sustained sacrifice of voluntary effort requires meaning to sustain it. Purpose is what allows you to maintain commitment during the quiet years when no crisis demands it. Britain couldn't maintain commitment during the quiet years because they didn't connect daily sacrifice to sufficient meaning. The threat seemed distant. The meaning seemed abstract. The comfort of delay seemed reasonable. Don't let that happen to you. Make the connection conscious. Make it daily. Let it be the psychological foundation that voluntary action requires. Some days, the work itself will be satisfying. Most days it won't. On those days, the meaning is what carries you. The knowledge that this daily action serves something you value more than comfort. That knowledge, renewed daily, is what sustains long effort. And here's something I want you to understand. This daily practice of connecting to meaning isn't motivation in the usual sense. It's not getting yourself excited. It's not pumping yourself up. It's much quieter than that. It's just remembering. Remembering what you decided. Remembering why it matters. Remembering that you're building something through these small daily actions that adds up to something significant over time. My great-grandfather didn't wake up every morning excited to make barrels. It was hard physical labor for little money. But he remembered what it meant. He remembered that he'd crossed an ocean for liberty. He remembered that his children would have opportunities he never had. He remembered that his daily labor was building a foundation for something larger than one day's work. That remembering sustained him. Let it sustain you. Now, let me bring this together. We've covered a great deal. Let me distill it to what matters most. The secret to doing hard things isn't courage in the moment of crisis. It's the decision to act before crisis forces you. It's the willingness to make up your mind about what must happen, then bear the long, sustained sacrifice that decision requires, even when no one applauds and no immediate reward appears. This is difficult. Democracy finds it difficult. Free people find it difficult. You will find it difficult. But here's the truth I've learned. Voluntary effort, properly directed and sustained, creates a force more powerful than any external pressure could generate. When you choose action before you must, you're not just accomplishing a task. You're building the capacity to function under any pressure, because you've proven you can act without pressure. The hard thing you're facing, it will eventually force your hand if it matters. The question is whether you'll wait until the house burns or whether you'll keep watch before the fire starts. That choice defines everything. Any person will awaken when the house is burning down. Any system of government will work when everything is going well. It's the system that functions in the pinches that survives. You're building yourself to be the person who functions in the pinches, not because you'll inevitably face them, but because you've already decided you can. Make up your mind before the test arrives. Design systems that work with your real capacity. Connect your sacrifice to meaning larger than comfort. And then, day by day, year by year, do the work that voluntary commitment requires. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need unlimited strength. You don't need crisis to access your capacity. You need decision. You need sustained effort. You need the willingness to act when action is still optional. That capacity, that force within you, it's waiting. Not for the perfect moment, not for crisis, but for your decision. The immigrants who built this nation made that decision knowing the cost. Britain eventually made that decision and survived catastrophe. You can make that decision today, voluntarily, before circumstances force it, and when you do, you'll discover what voluntary commitment makes possible. You have capacity you haven't accessed, strength you haven't tested. The same vitality that would emerge under crisis exists right now. You don't need emergency to access it. You need decision. You need sustained effort. You need the willingness to act when action is still optional. That capacity, that force within you, it's waiting. Not for the perfect moment, not for crisis, but for your decision. Make it, and then live with the dignity of someone who chose their hard thing voluntarily, with full knowledge of the cost and full commitment to bearing it. We must always keep our armaments equal to our commitments. We must realize that any bluff will be called. There must be no doubt in anyone's mind. The decision must be automatic. If we debate, if we hesitate, if we question, it will be too late. To say that democracy has been awakened by events is not enough. Any person will awaken when the house is burning down. What we need is an armed guard that will wake up when the fire first starts, or better yet, one that will not permit a fire to start at all. We should profit by the lesson and make our democracy work. We must make it work right now. Any system of government will work when everything is going well. It's the system that functions in the pinches that survives. That's true for nations. It's true for you. Be the person who wakes before the fire. Be the person who decides before they must. Be the person who maintains commitment through the quiet years. Be the system that functions in the pinches. Not because you're extraordinary, but because you made a decision, built a system, and sustained your effort even when comfort tempted you to delay. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to stop waiting for crisis and start acting from decision, then I invite you to subscribe. There's more I want to share about voluntary commitment, sustained sacrifice, and the capacity within free people to accomplish hard things. These principles shaped how I understood leadership, democracy, and human potential. They can shape how you approach your own challenges. And leave a comment. Tell me, what hard thing have you been postponing? What decision are you ready to make? This isn't casual conversation. This is commitment. Name it. Make it real. Write it where you can see it. Let this moment be the moment you stop waiting for circumstances to force your hand and start choosing with the full weight of decision behind you. Like this video if the message struck you. Not for the algorithm, but as your first small act of voluntary commitment. Click the button, make the choice, begin there. Let it be the first evidence that you're capable of action without compulsion. That small voluntary act done now begins building the pattern of voluntary action that will carry you through your hard thing. The hard thing is waiting, but so is your capacity to face it. Make up your mind, design your system, connect to your meaning, and then do the work day after day until the work is done. That's how free people accomplish hard things. That's how you'll accomplish yours. The decision is yours. The capacity is yours. The time is now.